Any kind of adventure that ever comes up, if I'm invited, I go.
I'm expecting it to be more mentally tough than physically.
I'm looking forward to it, actually, sort of getting back to basics.
Within the first week, everyone's hands are going to be cut and bleeding and building calluses, and it's going to hurt.
I've always had a fantasy about sailing in tall ships.
We do want to try and sail this ship exactly as she would have been sailed, say, over 200 years ago. We want to try and measure ourselves against Captain Cook and his crew.
It's not a reality TV show because it's much more historically based. What we're doing is basically putting 21st century people into an 18th century situation.
I think there are about 6 of us on the whole crew that haven't really done any sailing before.
I know we're planning to do a 18th century sailor's diet.
Crapping off the side of the boat, I think I'm not looking forward to that. We've got what are called seats of ease, which I'm standing right in front of one now. Here we are. As beautiful as it's simple. Right, well, this is the space we're going to live in, 50 of us, 6 weeks, living, eating and sleeping.
And this isn't a cosmetic issue, this is an issue about people living. Yeah. We've got to have dry clothes if we're going to be decent sailors.
Yeah. It's not a holiday. We're trying to sail, rough it, tough it. It's not a holiday on Daddy's yacht.
We write about these things, we read them, but we don't experience history. We don't really feel, smell it, taste it.
This is the story of a ship and a story of 2 adventures. One is happening now, the other more than 200 years ago. A secret voyage that altered the course of history and changed the face of the world. The ship is called the Endeavour. In 1768, Captain James Cook set out with a crew of nearly 100 men, officers, seamen, marines, scientists, and artists. Together, they sailed from England through uncharted seas, searching for undiscovered lands. Now, on an exact copy of the Endeavour, a 21st century crew is going to follow in the actual wake of Captain Cook himself.
Come on away, ship!
Using 18th century methods as much as possible, the crew will sail 3,500 miles along one of the most dangerous legs of Cook's epic 3-year voyage. It will take 6 weeks to follow his route up the coast of Australia, right across to Jakarta in Indonesia. On board are 40 volunteers. Most, like Alan, have some sailing experience.
I run a schooner. I skipper a schooner that's right now in Costa Rica. I just stay on the water as much as I possibly can.
Some are on leave from the Royal Navy, like Mickey.
As we can see, we're probably about the highest point in the ship. There's no higher than this. Wrestling with the sail and a gasket. Hanging on with my little toes, all at the aid of a safety net. And brains. Because you can't be clever coming up there doing this.
And a few, like Cole, have never sailed before.
The biggest boat I had ever been on was a ski boat on a local lake.
Unlike Cook's, this crew has women. Claire is the ship's doctor. She joins 15 other women from a variety of backgrounds.
I think the women who are here are all quite gutsy women, and they're not the sort of shrinking violet, oh, I must polish my nails type of girl.
The volunteer crew also includes historians like Ian and Jonathan, who look on this as a unique opportunity.
We mostly live in our imagination. We mostly live through texts. It's an impossible fantasy for most people to go back, physically back in time, into the vehicle of the very period that they're studying. And that's what we're going to be doing on this voyage. It's a fantasy come true.
It's also a dream come true for 4 Americans.
I first heard about this project because a friend of mine had cut a teeny little blurb out of the Boston Globe. How often do you get an opportunity to do this? You know, somebody says, we're going to fly you halfway around the world and let you sail a tall ship for free. Would you say no?
A friend of mine saw it on the internet, and she
was looking at reality TV show type opportunities, and she came across this and she thought it sounded miserable for herself, but she knew that I would want to do it.
I didn't actually tell my family I had even applied for the trip until I was told that I'd fly to New York to meet some of the people involved. And at that point I had to tell them, and they were totally shocked. My kids thought I was crazy. My wife didn't understand, but they got a big kick out of it.
Over a few pitchers of beer in the local taverna, I sat down and I wrote an essay and sort of passed it around to the local Coast Guard guys and said, "What do you think?" And they said, "That's pretty cool." And you know, they spilled some beer on it by accident, but folded it up and sent it off to the History Channel. And got a call, you know, a month later.
This is the port of Cairns in northeast Australia, where the 21st century adventure begins. On board at the moment are the Endeavour's 15 professional crew members who provision the ship. They will also be training the volunteers.
My job on board is when people come sailing with us, I get given one of the watches and I teach them everything they need to know about line handling and furling sails and climbing aloft and everything.
In the end, once they come to terms with a whole new different lifestyle and working together, you'll see a dramatic change from the start to the finish.
Chris is the filmmaker who will document the voyage. Also on board there is a goat for milk and chickens for eggs, just like on Cook's ship.
Friday, 29th of July, 1768. Constantly employed taking on board stores and provisions, poultry, pigs, sheep, and one goat.
Throughout the summer of 1768, the Endeavour was being prepared for a major voyage to Tahiti to carry out astronomical observations. But on board, there was a sealed envelope of secret instructions not to be opened until the ship was at sea. It took 7 months to reach Tahiti and 3 more months to complete the astronomical work. Cook was then ready to follow the secret orders. He headed south in search of the fabled piece of land now known as Antarctica. If it was there, Britain wanted it. But after more than 8 months, Cook had discovered nothing except 2 small islands and a great ocean. He then headed west into totally uncharted waters. It was all sea. For weeks, it was all sea.
Land ho! Land ho!
What Cook saw was not Antarctica, but the completely unknown east coast of what is today Australia. The destiny of the South Pacific was about to change forever, and the fate of an entire people lay in the balance.
An 18th century ship was not designed, you know, to make a film on. It's a very compact space, and the ceilings are very low down below, and obviously there's a lot of height with the mast, a lot of climbing to do. It's not designed to carry a big camera on your shoulder. That's the one thing. And the other thing is the salt environment, the saline environment. The salt crystals get into these modern cameras and play havoc. I lost my main camera, I lost within 3 days. I do my own camera work, so I said to my sound guy and my assistant cameraman, I said, right, look, we're just going to go and we're going to be the crew. We're going to be part of the crew along with everybody else. No difference between them and us.
The volunteer crew makes its way to the Endeavour, lying in Mission Bay, exactly where Cook anchored in 1770.
It's amazing. See the ship?
I was sort of hoping she'd be a bit closer than that.
That's the row, buddy.
Hey, looky. Yeah. You're gonna roll that far. We don't even have to stop.
They come from Britain, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, as well as America. They must row out to the Endeavour in shifts. The 2-mile trip will take roughly an hour. Waiting their turn are 2 of the ship's historians, Jonathan and Ian.
We're quite moved, really. This is the first time we've actually seen the real thing.
Yeah.
It's all been in the imagination up until now.
Now I'm trying to print it on my retina.
That's right. And also to see the view, as they say, from behind the trees.
Yeah.
The view of indigenous people from this side of the beach. That's how we're seeing it.
Shellfish.
Among the volunteers, there are also Australian Aborigines and New Zealand Maoris. Both cultures were dramatically affected by the coming of Cook. While everyone waits to board the Endeavour, Bob, an Aboriginal elder, leads Chris along a secret path snaking up the mountain overlooking Mission Bay. It ends at a sacred cave he had last seen as a boy. Inside, he says, is something mysterious and relevant to this voyage. Near the top of the mountain, Bob follows custom and asks his ancestors permission to enter the cave. Once inside, he points out a sun and moon, a turtle, and there, what looks like a three-masted ship.
That's certainly the Endeavour.
This may be one of the first Aboriginal recordings of a European arrival on these shores, perhaps done around the time in April 1770 when Captain Cook left the Endeavour in his longboat to explore the coastline he had discovered.
The captain and gentleman went on shore, but were opposed by 2 Indians with spears. Notwithstanding, the captain tried by all means to persuade them to lay their weapons down with presents and trinkets, but all to no purpose.
Musket.
On which account the captain was obliged to sting one with small shot.
Today, more than 230 years later, the Aboriginal protesters still feel the pain of Cook's arrival.
What are you protesting about?
Vanessa, one of the ship's historians, is not surprised by the visitors.
Nothing here for us, you know, you left nothing, you never give out anything in return.
He's upset that we're here. I don't know if he was talking about us or if he was talking about Cook. Came here and left nothing, just took. I think the Aboriginal communities here have every right to feel angry about the presence of the Endeavour. I mean, it's whether or not we want to do things in a kind of sensitive way, it's nonetheless a symbol of oppression to them, and there are a lot of issues that they would like to see addressed. So if the symbol is present, then they're bound to be angry about that.
When Cook landed, it began to erode our tradition, our culture. That's why we got those protesters.
Bob sympathizes, but he's decided to join the crew.
I see that as a better way of moving forward.
By mid-afternoon, the Aboriginal protest is over, and the last of the volunteer crew finally boards the Endeavour.
And the other guys in your watch, they bring them down here.
Welcome aboard, Ian.
Fantastic. This is the moment, isn't it?
I'm getting chills right now thinking about what I felt when I first saw her, you know?
When I first set foot on the ship, I actually thought this thing is a tub and we'll never make it.
I thought this is just going to be the experience of a lifetime. This is going to be incredible.
I'm just in awe. It's really unbelievable.
This will be their home for the next 6 weeks. Just 109 feet 3 inches long and 29 feet 2 inches wide, and draped with rope, 18 miles of rope. Up the shrouds to the courses, over the fighting top, then up to the topsails at the high topgallant yardarms, 130 feet above the deck of the ship. And down below, the cramped quarters where the volunteers will live.
I don't know what the hell's going to happen here. We selected this bunch of people to have the adventure. You know, there's no script. There's no plan other than we're trying to get from A to B, and that's the captain trying to get us there. And we're going to help him as the crew. But whatever happens, happens.
See?
Yeah, watch your heads.
JB, you're going to be in mainmast 5.
Okay.
All right, this doesn't correspond to your number. So one end of your hammock is slung here. We see MM5. The other end above Phil's head. All right, Cyril.
Yes, sir.
You're going to be in 3.
In this cramped space, the food will be cooked and eaten, and 50 people will sleep, as best they can.
Walk forward so you can find it. MM3. All the way under the bones.
The senior members of the permanent crew, like Cook's officers, have tiny cabins towards the stern of the ship. Immediately above is the officers' mess, where the navigators will be trying to master the complexities of 18th century navigation. And next to this, right at the back of the ship, Cook's own great cabin, where the botanists will study plant specimens collected from shore.
Right then, leave your bed in here. We're going to get the hammocks, drag them this way. Okay. All right, just bend down, make your way aft. It's going to pass a few out.
It's a bit rustic, to say the least. It's not the Savoy by any stretch of imagination. Just can't find anywhere to smoke at the moment. Banned. We'll see.
I wasn't expecting any type of modern facilities, toilets, sinks, that kind of thing. So I was really, really preparing myself for the worst. I wasn't even expecting the food to be cooked.
The food is cooked a long time. The crew on this voyage will have to survive on the same diet provided to 18th century sailors.
We're having salt beef with just like a big casserole, big stew. I'm secretly terrified that all the food's going to be inedible.
The food was nasty. There's just no two ways about it. Caro, bless her heart, became a very good friend of mine and did magical things with what she had to work with. But when you've got a wood-burning stove and 50 pounds of salted beef and some rotting vegetables, you're just going to be plumb out of luck.
But it's my great pleasure to cook good food for people so they enjoy it. So I'm worried, but we'll see. You can.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a bit of high shot with this side. Have a look. Welcome to Endeavour. And all that that entails.
The captain wastes no time. The volunteers must learn, quickly, how to sail the ship.
Who wants to climb?
Their new world on the Endeavour can be very dangerous unless they learn to understand and respect it. Captain Cook set out with a crew of some 100 men, knowing that over the 3 years of his voyage, he would lose more than a third of them. The 18th century sailor's great fear on a wooden ship was fire. Add to that the risk of being crushed under a falling mast or losing a limb to a snapped rope. And then there's the threat of drowning or scurvy. It's no wonder that the average age of a sailor was merely 25.
When we're handling lines, always assume there is something heavy connected to the other end of it.
Transfer one hand first, climb up a little more. Your second hand will then go onto that bar. Keep climbing up with your legs so that all the weight is borne on your strong quads.
Just push up with your legs.
Oh, gee, this is horrible.
You'll be all right.
The only way to work the sails is to climb, up the rope shrouds and then over the futtocks and up to the yardarms.
I remember the first night climbing the shrouds, up over the top of the fighting top, which a lot of people refer to as the crow's nest, and I reached up to grab the rigging, and they had serviced the rigging with tallow, which is animal fat, and it helps the lines, it prevents the lines from chafing. And I remember in the dark reaching up, grabbing the rigging, starting to pull myself up and realizing I had a handful of animal fat and thinking, if my hand slips now, I'm in bad trouble.
How's the climb, mate?
Doddle, lovely. I liked it. It's a bit dodgy climbing over the futtocks, but I've had that trouble for years now.
Which are the futtocks?
The overhang bit, that's your futtocks. You should always know where your futtocks are.
Salt meat, this is all very experimental. I know you have to steep it in fresh water to get the salt out, but how long, I didn't know. So I put it in about 9 o'clock this morning. And then About every hour, I gritted my teeth and had a tiny taste of the raw meat to see how much salt was left in it. So now I've got a fair idea of how long to steep it. I'm in the process of taking it down to my galley. I'm going to chop it up and add it to my frying onions and carrots.
Any ideas which way we turn the wheel? Think of it like you're driving a car. 060's over here. 010's over there. We want to go to 010, which is over there. So in your car, which way do you turn the wheel? You turn it that way.
We need to
yeah?
set sails,
exactly
okay?
The same.
What we've got to do at the moment, this sail is furled, all right? Which means it's stowed and it's safe. Weather won't affect it, okay? But we can't sail. So what I want to do is get everyone onto the yard and I want to unfurl the sail.
I don't think, I've cut the quantities down tonight because it's the first night, and I don't think people will be hungry enough to eat too much. It's hot, they're a bit, you know, anxious, it's all new. So here it goes, it's starting to sizzle.
When you're equal with the yard, get your safety harness and clip on to the black line that is on top of the yard. Okay, it's called the jack stay. That is your safety line, okay? And clipped on. Once you're clipped on, you will say nice and loud so everyone can hear you, stepping on port or starboard. Once you've said that, and making sure they know, then put one foot across the foot rope, other foot across the foot rope, and you are on the yard, okay?
Why do you have to tell them?
Because if someone else steps on here now, because it's slack, if someone else steps on, it'll push me up, and if I don't know they're stepping on, then I'll end up going, whoa.
Cook's men had no safety harnesses, and if they fell into the sea, they most likely drowned. The 18th century sailor couldn't swim. Finally, there's toilet training. The heads.
Basically, with the heads, if you haven't eaten it, don't put it in there, if you know what that means. But this one's mainly for the girls.
18th century heads could not have been simpler. Just holes in bits of wood over the bow, actually called seats of ease. But 21st century regulations allow their use only on the open sea, not on the Great Barrier Reef. So the crew gets to use the modern heads down below. But there's an ominous warning about a certain grey valve.
The paramount thing is to close off that grey valve. Okay, that is an open access to the sea. So if that valve is left open and we start getting a bit of pressure by rolling, that water will come straight up the system, plus whatever was the last entry into the system, and it will be all down there. Now, I don't know about you, but my two pet hates on here, one being late for a watch, and two, like walking around in someone else's piss and crap down there. So, close the grey valve.
Okay, 4 miles watch, stand by 4 course loads.
Suddenly, a wind blows up, a strong southerly.
Ease that out, Vanessa. Hold your chops. Pull away.
9 heavy yard arms need to be turned to the wind and the sails set before the 1-ton anchor can be dragged off the seabed.
Take 16. Take 16. Take 16. Take 16. 260! 260! 260! 260! 260! 260!
Let's weigh anchor.
Prepare to weigh anchor.
Walk forward on the capstan.
big machine is going to start to move any minute now.
In this wind, we're going to sail so well. This is going to be awesome.
Walk harder on the capstan. Keep walking forward.
Slowly on the capstan.
This is what it's about. We've all been waiting for the wind to get in our soul. This phenomenal southerly blow's going to take us in the right direction. We've got to work as a team. We really have to throw away 21st century individualism, and we have to acquire the collective benefit of the whole, working together, being ready to help people who can't manage, and being helped yourself. I think you've got to be prepared to eat dirt, because these are highly skilled people, the professional crew here. And, you know, we're dolts, we're blunderheads. We'll get there, but, you know, willingness is not enough. You've got to acquire the skills.
You give a little more than you might give if you were, you know, staying in a house with a group of people and can just get up and leave. Because you can't get up and leave, even if you want to.
Hang on. I'll come in. Let's swing right ball.
I'm coming back.
I'm scared. I'll admit it. This is scary. But it's kind of cool too.
So this is the foremast, one of the three masts that have to be manned at all times by watches, just to keep a lookout. And they're pretty hefty ropes, all of which are tarred, which makes them sometimes solid and sometimes very slippery, which can be slightly worrying. As you get higher, you get to this point where you get to an overhang, like a regular sort of overhang on a mountain. You really need to just clip on their safety harness, and you go, as you go backwards, you go, and this is slightly tricky. I reckon even worse on the high seas when the ship's moving, but you actually soon get used to it. This will be a point at which you can look out.
Even with its novice crew, the Endeavour makes good progress up the coast, the wind carrying her some 12 nautical miles along Cook's original route. But the wind comes and the wind goes. As the day comes to an end, the Endeavour is surrounded by coral reefs. The decision is made to stay here for the night.
Down the circle, you can all do each other's back. It's like being a dog.
Whoops. I think I've just covered Chris in boiling oil.
Are you eating meat, Christian? Yeah, I guess so. Alrighty.
Are you vegetarian, Christian?
I was, up until about 5 minutes ago. It only lasted 5 years. Just a fad then.
5 years?
This looks lovely, Caroline. This is going to be good. This has got to be better than the food on board a modern warship.
Is that where you normally live?
Yeah.
That doesn't say much. That does not say much for modern warships.
Hardest course in the Royal Navy, the RN cookery course, you know. Nobody's ever passed it.
That is really salty. Salty, isn't it? Very salty.
The ship's biscuits are very fine if you can knock them around with a hammer.
That's a biscuit.
Doesn't look too unappetising.
The 18th century sailor loved the food, for it was better and more plentiful than he got at home. On board, he consumed some 5,000 calories a day and most likely gained weight. That was not true on this trip.
I lost about 5 pounds, 5-10 pounds. Not as much as some people did. Some people lost like 20-25 pounds.
What's the reaction, guys?
The meat is salty.
Yeah, it's salty. Yeah.
The vegetables are very good.
Good, okay. Well, here we go. Welcome to the 18th century.
Cheers, mate.
I've got salt in my hair. Okay, my feet ache and smell like of mud. And I've got a film of dripping on my hands.
Yes. Yeah. You've got that too.
That's good. And that's day one.
Hey.
I worked harder today than I've worked in months. And I just want to get bed sorted out. These hammocks are like torture devices, you know? They're just this sticky, stiff, stained canvas that's really, I mean, maybe large enough for an 18th century sailor, but not large enough for me.
Side by side, only 14 inches apart, 45 crew members tried to sleep, anchored somewhere between the 18th and the 21st century.
If it wasn't for the snoring, that'd be a really comfortable sleep.
Yeah.
Well, your hammock is actually sawing a nice hole in my neck.
Look, I've got shitloads of room with one.
Cole is actually interesting because he doesn't snore much.
They
Like,
actually
you
get
can
right
hear
in.
Mickey. The whole Mickey's like a shit's
Mickey's actually fit right in.
Cole's is just like someone just chopped the head off the goat. You know, it's like blood gurgling.
This
Who's the best snorer?
That a snoring bird in my body. Right there.
Mickey, go, Mickey is snoring.
Mickey, do you feel a bit goth out this morning?
Oh, I'm used to it. Christ's sake. What bigger blokes than that have a go at me every morning for snoring. And my wife, of course.
Did you get any sleep last night?
Apart from the snoring. They kept taking it in turns. One would stop and then the next would start.
If you get a stick,
yeah,
and just keep it down your hammock, poke them.
Yeah, I was
wake them
thinking
up
of
and then look
that,
really innocent.
That's actually quite a nice way to do it.
That'll go up.
Yeah, just goes around it.
After yesterday's protest, Bob, Rico, and Bruce decide to hoist the Aboriginal flag.
You want to know the meaning of this flag?
I do.
Do you know? The black symbolizes the people of this country. This yellow here is the sun, and the red is the blood that was shed for this land. That's the symbolism behind this flag. And it's now the Aboriginal flag.
Right. Let it fly.
We raise this flag in the spirit of reconciliation, and we believe out of reconciliation we'll have a treaty. One day, soon we hope.
Bruce Gibson, who was a very good friend of mine, was very involved in Aboriginal politics. And I think the reason I understood what they were going through is because I'm from Oklahoma. And what the Aboriginal people were subjected to is very, very similar to what Native Americans were subjected to.
You know, I'm interested to find out more about what the animosity is still between the Aboriginal people and the British. You know, I mean, obviously we had, when we were coming on board, we had the boat circling around, flying the Aboriginal flag that was I'm not saying the nicest things about Captain Cook, but I think it was important to them to raise their flag on this ship.
All right, guys, we're going to go into cleaning now because you guys are so messy. Big scrub out. Clean up the goat, clean the chickens up, make the world beautiful. Okay, so go on, Ed, get it done. Once you lift this, put it right there.
Every day, Cook's crew spent hours cleaning and scrubbing the ship as a protection against disease, chores that are as important today.
That stuff. It might gooey and it might stinky, but it's really nice down here. Shady, close to the water. It's like my own little balcony. I just hope everyone's mood stays as cheerful as it is at the moment. A few arguments I expect. I'm only predicting this, I don't know anything. People start getting really fed up with the food, fed up with living, sleeping in a hammock, fed up with discipline, basically. A lot of these people has never lived with discipline or they've always been told what to do. They've always been free spirits. And that is going to affect some people. They're not going to like it. They're going to take offence to it. Living in the Navy has given me a certain insight to people in general, how people react. I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not university educated. I've just been around a bit, as it were. I'm just using a prediction.
I think people will get all sorts of things out of this series. First of all, a very keen sense of history, and a really interesting time in history, of exploration and discovery of the South Seas. But in a very different way. It's not book history, it's experiential history. We went out and tried to, follow in the wake of this extraordinary sailor, Captain Cook, and gain something of an idea of what it was to be like, to be an explorer in the 1770s. But then beyond the history, it's also very much a 21st century experience of meeting personal challenges. It was an adventure.
With the wind back in her sails, the Endeavour is heading north once again, exactly on Cook's route. And after 24 hours, she arrives at a wooded promontory jutting out into the Great Barrier Reef. In June 1770, James Cook was in the same place.
Here we are at Cape Tribulation, and from the point of view of the historians, this is an important moment, because this is where, almost by premonition, I suppose, Cook starts to see an ordeal in front of him, quite a long and protracted ordeal. He's having difficulty managing to sail past this mass of land, and he's starting to get into trouble with coral reefs. And from this point, really, almost until we reach the far north, he's in a state of, I think, acute anxiety. He's not showing it because he's a very phlegmatic Yorkshireman.
Uncannily, it is from this same point, Cape Tribulation, that the 21st century Endeavour's troubles begin.
Oh, she's just doing the same thing. Every time I go to milk her, she just gets upset about it and won't stay still. So she just tries to kick over the pan and does the runner. So I don't know what's wrong with her at the moment.
The goat is sick, and so is Vanessa. An extension to the yardarm snaps.
Dennis, get this boat in the water, quick as you can.
Okay.
And then there's the bird that won't go away.
A bird landing like that culturally there's something wrong. That's a sign of some sort.
Really? An omen?
Yeah, it has happened to me before.
Really?
Yeah. It could be a death in the family. It could be anything.
The next morning, another problem.
Just a couple of things. I don't know if your topman told you about the grey valves and what would happen if they getting left on. Got one more chance. 3 left on last night. So, and you don't even have to open the stinking grey valve to pump the urine out, okay? A little bit of consideration for your other 55 shipmates, or those toilets will get turned off. They will. It takes nothing to pump the urine through, okay?
It seemed like every day we would get a little lecture of what we were doing wrong.
Okay, the washing should be gone by now.
It came to a head one day with the laundry, where, you know, we were told that we weren't fast enough with the laundry and it had to be put out, and where we could put it.
It's going to get dewy, so get your washing done as quick as you can and get it down as quick as you can. We look like a Chinese junk at the moment, but that's life.
So did Cook's ship. Because there were people aboard and they have to wash and they have to dry things.
One person in particular kind of let him have it about the laundry issues.
And this isn't a cosmetic issue, this is an issue about people living. Yeah. We've got to have dry clothes if we're going to be decent sailors.
Yep, exactly. That's why they got left up there overnight. Dew got them. It's a waste of time drying them out during the day, isn't it? It's not a holiday. We're trying to sail, rough it, tough it. It's not, no, a holiday on Daddy's yacht. So if this stuff's dry, Dom, we'll get this down and we'll get the world rolling. Let's go. Come in.
We're just told that this boat shouldn't look like Daddy's yacht. In fact, the people who've got the idea it should be Daddy's yacht, it seems to me, are Gordon. Cook understood that the thing that made a boat work is keeping the men, and in this case, of course, women, happy. And of course, you let them wash whenever there was an opportunity. We have got to be able to live. When we do finally get washing, we're told we've got to get the bloody washing down again. I'm speaking out because other people don't dare to speak out. They're afraid to. But I'm a 55-year-old man and I've been around in the world, and so I'm not... They can do what they like to me. I don't care. I don't think this is seaman-like thinking. I don't think it is. I think it's luxury yacht thinking. It's the exact thing that they're accusing us of.
This ain't no pleasure cruise, baby.